Well, good afternoon. I'm Faru Yaramani, Vice President for Research and Innovation at New Jersey Edge, a regional research and education network based in New Jersey. We're grateful to the National Science Foundation for support for our NSF Campus Cyber Infrastructure Regional Networking Award, which we refer to as the CRISPy Project, which includes resource sharing, identity and access management, and authorization, as well as data management, are all important aspects of the project. And we are implementing Globus in the project. We're pleased to have partnered with Globus for a webinar series focused on data management. Today is the fourth webinar titled Globus Connect Server Installation and Configuration. And we're pleased to have Lev Gorenstein, Solutions Architect at Globus, as our speaker. Globus is a University of Chicago nonprofit service enabling research data management at scale. Lev is a chemist by training, previously conducted research in the area of computational chemistry, molecular modeling, and protein dynamics at Purdue Marquet Center for Structural Biology, and worked at the Purdue Rosen Center for Advanced Computing, RCAC, as a senior computational scientist. At RCAC, Lev provided advanced application management and support, as well as high-performance computing education and engagement for HPC users at Purdue and nationwide. His interest in computational and data management workflows led him to his current position at Globus, where he facilitates Globus adoption and applications worldwide. So thank you, Lev.
Thank you, Faru. And good to be here. Let me start sharing my screen. And we will talk about installing and configuring Globus server on your systems. So, brief agenda. We'll talk about concepts and definitions. We'll talk about prerequisites, general recommendations for deployment, and then we'll go talk about step-by-step creating a Globus endpoint, setting up collections, what common configuration options you have, and how to monitor and manage user activity. And I assume that everyone here knows what Globus is, but now in the process of deploying and setting up Globus on your infrastructure. As Faru said, I welcome questions. If there is something immediately pressing, please bring it to attention to the host. We'll answer Q&A at the end and go from there. So you probably have seen this picture before, right? I call it Globus triangle. There is point A, point B. There is Globus service that we run. User comes into the Globus service. The Globus service is a controller or orchestrator in a sense. No data passes through Globus service directly. All the transfers are directly from point A to point B. That's a data channel. The control channel is through us, and that enables us the fire and forget operation. Like, right, you command the transfer, and you can close that web browser and go home. And Globus service monitors and orchestrates and watches that transfer. You can command a terabyte transfer from your cell phone, and you will, because data doesn't flow through your cell phone, you will not run out of your data management plan, of your cellular data plan. Globus abstracts storage systems in quanta called collections, right? And then every transfer is between one collection and another collection. This allows us to abstract the underlying storage and mask underlying storage complexity And a collection is a collection. It may have a POSIX mounted file system behind it. It may have an S3 bucket. It could be a Google Drive. That is still presented. What user sees is files and folders. And so all that complexity and the API of talking to Google Drive is hidden behind. All right, so in this talk, we will be concentrating on this one point, the Globus Connect server. So it's a piece of software that you configure, installed by sysadmins, launch that as root, native packaging for your favorite distros, and it makes your storage accessible via Globus. And here is the link, the URL for full set of documentation on Globus Connect Server. So the sysadmin's view, and this will be complicated. So there is a learning curve. All right, so at the bottom, there are data transfer nodes, DTNs. These are physical servers that, in the case of POSIX mounted file system, right? They mount that storage, or they have network connection to talk to whatever cloud storage, let's say AWS or anything you need to. They have, preferably in Science DMZ, they have storage mounted and accessible on them, and they form a group of related data transfer nodes, form an endpoint. Endpoint is a management and configuration interface. So Globus service generally doesn't talk to a specific node. It talks to the endpoint. And an endpoint can have one or more nodes. The more the merrier. You get better performance, resilience if you have multiple nodes. But just one is enough. Once you have an endpoint, the next layer up is storage gateways. And it's I think of them as holders of policies and configurations. So it's a storage gateway is a specific storage. It holds policies for accessing specific storage. And you can have multiple storage gateways on the same endpoint. As you see, here's an example. This endpoint has a high assurance storage gateway for POSIX 1, a regular assurance, standard assurance POSIX gateway, storage gateway for POSIX file system, and then an AWS S3 storage gateway for talking to an S3 storage. Again, also standard regular assurance. They have their own sets of policies and configuration, who can access what. And then off of those hang collections. And you see this dotted line. Anything below the dotted line is this is the sysadmin domain. That's what you as the administrators of Globus Connect Server will be dealing with. Users don't see any of that. Users see collections. And always user only interact with collections, and there are two types of collections: mapped and guessed, which we'll talk a little later. I'll expand on that. So collections are the data access interface for the users, and yes, we support two methods of accessing. The standard Globus transfer is using Grid FTP protocol. And also, you could enable HTTPS access to your collections, so users literally can curl or wget files or upload and downloads. If you allow it, it's a subscription feature. We'll talk a little later about it. But for now, we'll concentrate on regular Globus transfers with FTP. So again, to summarize the terminology, endpoint is a construct that identifies one or more Globus Connect instances, the servers, to the Globus service. So it's a name in our namespace. Data transfer node is a physical box. The more of them you have that make up the endpoints, the more of them you have, you get better performance, resilience, and ease of maintaining. A connector or store, it's a software package that implements an interface that allows global service to talk to specific storage system, storage type. You only see them. Every Globus Connect server comes with a POSIX connector that does not require a subscription. So if you can mount a file system, if it's mounted, you can serve it. That's a POSIX connector. Similarly, we have multiple premium connectors. You want to talk to AWS, you need an S3 connector, or S3 compatible storage, you need an S3 connector. You want to talk to Google Drive, you need to unlock. You don't need to install; they all installed. You just need to unlock usage of Google Drive or whatever other premium storage connector. For all intents and purposes, nobody ever interact directly with a connector except for setting up configuration. So we'll just ignore it. Storage gateway, that's the next level, right? It's an instance of a connector configured to access a specific storage system with whatever policies you need. You can, path restriction. I only want to serve this corner of my file system and nothing more. Or I only allow these identity providers, these identity domains, or I only allow this handful of trusted users to access it if you have to. So all of these policies are in the storage gateway. And then collection is just a logical construct that has a name, and it allows the user to access data in the Globus service. And it hangs off of a storage gateway. So it is following the policies declared by in the gateway. So in a sense, a projection of some part of your storage system into the Globus universe. So that's a sysadmin view. And our researcher view is that Globus triangle, right? They talk to a collection. They come to one collection and transfer, authenticate to collection one, authenticate to collection two, start transferring between the two. Now, this is mapped collection. This assumes that the user identity has a local account on both of those file systems, right? Thinking about just plain storage, server one, server two, user has to be able to authenticate there and have an account. So user, now this says subscriber, it should really say user. Anyone can do basic mapped collection transfers. No subscription is needed. There is a next possibility is we call them guest collections. So now we have, this is how researchers can do data sharing. And so there is someone who has an account on the local system, the sharer, creates a kind of a second entrance into the part of that file system for their collaborator and for sharee. And when the sharee would not be able to enter through the regular map collection, right? They don't have a local account. the sharer has opened the door for them and told Globus, like, this person I allow to access this little corner. And what happens is the guest comes in through the secondary door, the guest collection door, and all the file system access is carried out with credentials of the sharer. So this is kind of an overlay permission model where the person sharing tells Globus that they allow this part to be accessible by that particular identity, and that identity comes in and gets to this part. There is nothing changed on the file system, right? There is no second account. You don't need to create temporary credentials or anything. You don't need to change any read write execute thing attributes on the storage. It's all on top of what you have defined on the file system. There is a Globus bit, not bit, a Globus part that gets utilized as well. Guest collections, it is a premium feature. It requires a subscription, but the important part is only one part of the sharing equation needs a subscription. So, it can be a source of data that creates a guest collection and the collaborator pulls from that, or the collaborator can create a guest collection and the source start pushing to it. Just one is enough. How do mapped and guest collection view differ? Well, they really don't. It's the same. You may infer something from the past. For example, notice this looks like home, some user. That's a mapped collection on University of Chicago Midway cluster, and someone logged in and they are in their home directory. The other side is a guest collection. And it's named that way, and it's anchored somewhere, and the root of the guest collection doesn't coincide with the root of the file system. But that same thing, so this may be a little bit of a hint, but it doesn't have to be because even for map collection, the root of the file system doesn't have to coincide with the root of the collection. So they are the same. They're slightly different types of beast, but they are the same beast. All right. Now, any important questions in the chat? Nothing?
Yeah, there are a few. Can multiple endpoints be configured on a single DTN?
No. The other way around is possible, but yeah.
And Vinod Gupta had a question about always thought Globus is designed for data copy operations. Is it also a good solution for mounting the remote file systems?
No, we do not. We cannot mount the file system. No. If you want to serve something, Globus is a transfer service. As there is a lot more to it, but in the context of this presentation, Globus is a transfer service. So it's bring your own storage, deploy your own Globus Connect server, the endpoint, and make it a collection. Now the collection is visible in the Globus universe, and people can transfer in and out of it. But no, you cannot mount through Globus. Now, there is a feature. We're working on the streaming service within Globus where just like now there are endpoints that can transfer files. We're working on a modification where there will be two endpoints that can create a tunnel a secure tunnel between them, orchestrated by Globus service. And then you could, through that tunnel, you might be able to do it, to do remote mounts or basically anything. It's just a secure tunnel, robust. But that's still in implementation and not yet.
Cool. Thank you. And Clifford Crovett had a question. With premium connectors to something like AWS S3, is data going through the DTN to get to the bucket, or does it go directly to the bucket somehow? Thinking about bandwidth needs when serving multiple storage locations.
Through the DTM.
Let's see.
Yeah.
And can you speak to how exposed to the outside world is the source file system need to be?
I will. Down the road, yes.
Great. That was it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So on the data transfer node, the conceptual architecture, there is the command line interface, GCS, CLI, Globus command, Globus Connect Server command. Through that command, it doesn't have to be on the DTM. You could, in theory, you can log in to the endpoint manager from anywhere. But for simplicity, most people do. They just log into the DTM data transfer node and run their Globus Connect Server commands right there. There is a service, GCS manager, that runs there. That is responsible for taking commands from the CLI interface and then talking to the Globus service that we run, and then it's a Globus transfer service, Globus auth, all of those. And then there is a grid FTP server that runs as root, but then when a transfer request comes in, grid FTP server is forked with the identity of the mapped user, and all the transfer happens with the credentials of the user. So, the standard fork and drop privileges model. When you install a Globus Connect server, when you create an endpoint, it registers this Globus GCS client with the Globus auth service. The installation, Globus auth service has projects to group this installation. We'll talk about it later, but that's a general conceptual overview of what's inside a data transfer node. Data transfer nodes, well, ideally, we want them in the Science DMZ. We refer to the excellent website from Energy Science Networks about the whole concept of DMZ, but you want to ensure a friction-free transfer of data between your endpoint and the outside. Whatever parts of the outside world you want to be able to communicate with, right? It is possible to lock things inside just your own perimeter and like, oh, this is my campus internal endpoint, and I just block it and not let anyone outside of my campus talk to it. That's fine if you need to, but if you need to be able to talk to collaborators, you have to think about it. And again, we're talking large data transfers. Intrusion detection or active packet inspection on a 100 gigabit link is painful for everyone. So ideally, you want to outside of the corporate IPS and IDS and all of that. So prerequisites. Yes, that's a network accessible system, so you have to chat with your security and network people and all that. The control channel must be on a publicly routable IP. Default port is 443, so we recommend 443 in and out. This is configurable. You can restrict it to just the Globus NetBlock, which is I forgot, maybe .29. But this really affected the functionality. We strong recommendation is to have heavy DTN on the public for the control channel. Have it on the public routable IP. Now, data channel doesn't have to be. Again, you can have an endpoint that you only want to talk for users on campus. And so the data channel can go through a different interface than the control channel. The default set of ports is 50,000 to 51,000. You can change it. We strongly advise against it because most places don't change it. And when the transfer happens, the service looks for intersecting section of this interval on the source and on the destination. And if you don't don't intersect with this range, you'll have a hard time. We have a good document about consequences of restricting firewall policy for the installation, and it describes multiple scenarios. If you have specific needs, lock it. One thing I want to mention specifically, and I know every sysadmin and network security person worth their salt immediately see what you want 1,000 ports open to the entire world, right? The 50,000 to 51,000. Yes, but they are not immediately open. There is nothing that sits there and listens all the time. These ports are being, like, when the transfer comes in under the direction of an orchestration of Globus service, the endpoint gets a command. Well, there is this specific IP on the other side that wants to connect to your port, I don't know, 50,100. And only then the port is open. For specific IP, the chunk of data is transferred, port is closed. So it's not actively listening. So it's not that as bad as it sounds. So now we have a half an hour. We'll go a bit of walkthrough for the installation of Globus Connect Server. This talk at tutorials in about an hour and a half to 2 hours. We do it live with live actions and people following along, and at the end having their own configured GCS endpoints and collection instances. Nothing live right now, but I just wanted to make kind of to imprint that this is, yes, there is a learning curve, but it's not complicated.
Lev, there's a couple of questions. Can you speak to how exposed to the outside world the source file systems need to be?
Yeah, so you can decide which parts of the file system you want to be visible in the Globus universe. So, and we'll talk about path restrictions a little down the road. But as open or as restricted as your policy dictates and your needs are, you can. Before joining Globus, I was at Purdue Research Computing on our campus clusters. The default was we do not limit what our unclassified regular cluster researchers want to do. So their home directories, their scratch directories, their project directories were available. There were Globus collections serving those, and they were allowed to share with more or less anyone, it was up to them. There are other places that don't even require anyone from outside on their networks, so they have it locked down. So whatever you need. The only requirement is that uh, your data transfer node must be able to talk to Globus service. That's a must. Other than that, whatever you need.
Another related question is, if limiting the data channel to a private network, does that mean only internal transfers are possible and no transfers with systems outside the network?
Correct. Yes, because again, remember that's the data channel is always point to point, source to destination, and so the source needs or source. Let's say, imagine your system is destination. The source must be able to connect to your system, right? So if you're on a private network, if you have a NAT, we support NAT, deployment behind the NAT. So if it's natted, that's fine. If it's not natted, they're not getting in.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So this is, in a nutshell, these are steps. Install software packages, set up the endpoint, the logical construct, add nodes into the endpoint, create a storage gateway. Most people start with POSIX, and create a map collection. This is the minimum minimorum. You do not need any subscription for that. Anyone can do it. If you have a subscription, you can associate the endpoint with subscription to unlock premium features. You can add additional, enable additional connectors. You can then create or allow creation of guest collections. You can enable browser upload, downloads. All of those features are subscription related. So step by step, adding software packages, nothing special, just add our repo, install the RPM or .dev, whatever you need. Endpoint creation and node setup. Again, Globus Connect Server endpoint setup. And then you give it a name. You can specify organization, you can specify contact email. The important thing is the owner. This must be an identity. That's not an email. That's an identity that is known to Globus Auth. So it needs to be it needs to log into Globus ahead of time. And so it needs to be known to Globus. And I will stress again that this is not an email. It may look like an email, but it's whatever your IDP tells outside sources when you about you. What's your username? What's your identity? I mean, it can be in many places. It's the same as your. I don't know. At U Chicago, it's called CNET ID. At Purdue, it's called career account. Whatever the string of characters. In other places, it's a bunch of numbers. If it's a Google account, it could be name at accounts, name at organizational domain at accounts at google.org. So it has to be an identity. All right, and that's it. That runs a whole a few steps and spits out a UUID for your endpoint. And then the next thing you do is you run node setup. If this is a very first node in the endpoint, you just run it and that's it. This command generates a deployment key JSON file. save this file and guard it. You will need it because in that file are all configurations of your endpoint and the future collections and everything are stored encrypted in the Globus service. In order, this file contains the key to decrypt it. So when you need to modify your endpoint, when you need to add nodes to it, you will need this file. So once it's generated, keep it, save it. And one thing that might come up in this process, running endpoint setup, the endpoint generates a Globus Auth client. The Globus Auth service. Clients are organized in projects. That's just for ease of organization. So you can say, oh, these are my campus cluster endpoints here. This is my shared national file system. I'm running a project called national for NSF. This is my separate project. Projects can have different admins attached to them. So it's just a grouping organizational concept. If you don't have any project, never just logged into Globus, your first time deployment of Globus Connect Server, the project will be automatically created for you. If you have existing endpoints or multiple existing projects, then endpoint setup will ask you, well, give me the project ID you want to add this thing to. You have multiple. And you can always go, if you go to Globus web app in the settings developers, you will see all of your projects. So setting up an endpoint, Globus Connect Server endpoint setup, Globus Connect Server node setup. I don't even remember if you need, this may be an old slide. You never heard restarting Apache or whatever, HTTPD, whatever it's called on your machine. And then you can run, you need to authenticate to the endpoint. So log in to the endpoint on your local host, and you can do endpoint show. By the way, nobody has, when Globus Connect Server installs, it has tab completion, but nobody, even with tab completion, nobody wants to type long command. So there is a GCS alias, symlink. So you can type GCS login localhost or Globus Connect Server login localhost. So that's it. We've generated the endpoint. We added one node to it. That's where we are. If you want to add another node, you just you copy that deployment key JSON from the original DTN onto the new one and run Globus Connect Server node setup again with that deployment key. And that's it. The node just slides into your endpoint just like that. Literally one command. So you can add nodes, remove nodes. Once you have multiple nodes, you can enable, disable them. So you have, your typical maintenances. You can do them all pretty much without service disruption. All right. Next, storage gateways. And storage gateways define a set of access policies on multiple fronts. One is, what users, so authentication details, identity domains, how those identities are mapped to local accounts. Right? Remember, we're talking about mapped collection. There has to be a local user that corresponds to the incoming identity. And also, you can define policy scopes, which file systems are accessible and available, visible in via Globus, which local account can actually access. So identity don't the identity domain is a whole lot of users, but not every one of them, for whatever policy reasons, you may need to restrict access to your Globus collections. You can also define if you want your endpoint, your collection and your storage gateway to be high assurance with. We'll talk a little later what that unlocks. The high assurance setting is immutable. It has to be applied to a storage gateway at creation and cannot be changed. So you cannot start with a regular storage gateway and then later update it to be high assurance. You have to create it as high assurance, and you cannot downgrade either. So that's important. But remember, you can have multiple storage gateway on the same endpoint, so that's not a problem. Multi-factor authorization requirements, again, that can be changed, but down the line, but a lot of high assurance settings deployment want also MFA. So let's look at the parts. Some policies for local account holders, you define identity domains that mycampus.edu, or you may also allow service accounts on the Globus side, so then that'd be identity is accounts at auth.globus.org. So that's one, and you allow the domains of identities that you permit on your system, and then you also need to configure the method to map those identities to a local account. On user in Globus Universe, users can have multiple identities linked together. Let's say that my ORCID ID, my University of Chicago ID, my Globus identity, my personal Gmail, my GitHub. I have multiple of those. It's still the same me. I have them linked. Globus knows that it's me. And on access attempts, the linked identities will be scanned for match. If nothing matches your required domains, I will be asked to link another one from your domain, any of the domains that you configured to accept on your endpoint. And identity domains can be, again, any organization in the Globus federated list. If you're communicating, federating through InCommon or EduGain, that's it. It could be your specific institutional identity provider that is trusted by Globus. We can configure. We can talk with your identity people and define, make a record of your IDP in our system, or you can deploy a local OIDC server with your PAM stack that would authenticate people. Multiple options here. Now the mapping of identities to local accounts. The default, if you don't configure anything, the default method is we strip everything after the @ sign. So just whatever identity domain is removed, whatever is left is the username part. This is great for campus identities with synchronized local accounts, which is a lot of places do have. But if you don't, that's no problem. There are ways of providing that method to Globus, and you can specify expressions in a JSON document, like regex like, or you can call out and execute a custom script, and then the script will return on the output of the script. We would expect the mapping. And this is a fun part. Some places, because we have an example of such script in our documentation, but really it can do anything you need. So some places do use this method to even provision accounts. So that if the user never log into the system, but they by policy they are trusted, and the system can execute part of this custom script can be user add. Whether it's a good way for you or not, that's up to you to decide. But it is possible. So here's an example of creating a storage gateway. Let's say it'll be for POSIX mounted regular mount file system. No need to have a subscription. It will allow access with certain identity, which you have to specify. And you can also, for example, you can specify re-authentication timeout. I don't know if you probably don't want 90 minutes. Default is I think 11 days. If you do 90 minutes, your users will hate you. So that's the command, right? Storage gateway, create POSIX, give it a name, give one or more identity domains, give the timeout. The default is 11 days, but you can certainly change it. And that's it. Again, that spits another UUID. Everything in Globus land is UUID. Your endpoint is a UUID. Your storage gateway UUID. All collections have UUIDs. Even users are UUIDs. Okay, so this far we've done endpoint, we've done DTN, we have storage gateway with policies. Now we need to create a mapped collection on that storage gateway. So we need to decide where that collection will be routed on the file system, where the landing zone will be, and okay, policies are in storage gateway. In storage gateway, we already configured that. So the general recommendation, and I think there will be another slide about it. So this is the command to do: collection, create, give it a storage gateway UUID, give it a base path on the file system. So every collection will be routed at the specified base path. And if you do nothing else, everything underneath that path will be visible. It can be restricted to a subset of locations. So even if you specify root as the base path later, and I will show in shortly, you will be able to lock it down to I want to only display /home and /scratch and nothing more. It will landing location can also be adjusted. There is an option for that, but by default this is a Unix server after all, so defaults to user home directory. And with that, we would have our whole stack mapped collection enabled. I see there are questions, right?
Yes. Vinod Gupta, they're seeing a huge SSL penalty on performance. Is there a way to fine-tune parameters to enhance the performance?
Yes, absolutely. You can. So by default, we always use whatever cipher suit you have configured for your SSL. So one is doing to tune that. The other is I think I would suggest sending us a ticket at support@globus.org, and our support folks are absolutely fantastic, and so this is certainly beyond my capabilities, especially on this call.
Peter Good had a question. Are mapped collections so named because they are user mapping from the Globus service to the local system, storage system? Seems obvious, but just want to confirm.
Yep, exactly. And then guest collections are because there is a guest involved. Yep.
And Clifford Kravit had a couple of questions. When doing system patching reboots, what has to be done to make sure active transfers are not dropped?
Nothing. And they won't be dropped. Now, they, there will be an interruption. So in the transfer logs, in the activity logs, you will see an error, but that's exactly what the fire and forget nature, why we have the orchestrating global service, um, you know, doing the control channel, that every 5 minutes we will retry failed chunks and eventually they succeed. I think there is a timeout for how long, I forgot how many days, maybe 3 days, and of unsuccessful, then 3 days of unsuccessful retries of a task will kind of signal that it's uh, inactive. But other than that, also, if you are a subscriber, if your endpoint is subscribed, there are pause rules. You can pause the endpoint. So all the transfers Globus will know that, okay, there is a maintenance, all the transfers are paused. Once you lift your pause rules, things will continue.
Okay. Thank you. And Clifford had another question. Does an endpoint perform load balancing at all? For example, maybe with multiple DTNs?
Yes, absolutely, it does. The tasks are fanned out between DTNs, if you have multiple DTNs. Even within a DTN, there are multiple grid FTP processes that service the same task. And then even further down, there are multiple files transferred simultaneously within the task. So there is concurrency, parallelism, and times DTNs.
Thank you.
All right. So we have our setup. So again, just to summarize an overall picture, how does the Globus transfer happens? Right, the user comes in and accesses the Globus web app, for example. They're sent to authenticate to their identity provider. So they authenticate, they come back to Globus service, then they go to the endpoint on let's say on source, on campus cluster or whatever. They then the identity is mapped to a local resolves to local user. Grid FTP server is spawned with credentials and of that local user. Grid FTP server access the files. At the same time, on the other side, we're talking about mapped collection, right? The user authenticates to the other side as well with their local account on that side. And then now the two Grid FTP servers start talking to each other directly. And the Globus cloud service, hosted service maintains the control. And if one of them goes offline, we keep retrying and retrying, and so it's different from SSH. That's one thing. SSH, right? You remember Wi-Fi blips, you're out. Not in this case. All right. Limiting things, and I think we're running out of time. I am happy to stay on longer. I will. The slides will be shared, of course. And if you have any questions, my contact, reach out to me or to Global Support, and we'll continue the discussion.
Thank
So
you.
local account restriction, right? You can do user allow, user deny. So who can access your Globus thing and be mapped? You can restrict by groups, again, allow and deny. Now, you can also restrict what can be accessed, right? Restrict paths. Our recommendation, always use the shortest base path possible for your collections. So anchor them at root, because if you ever want to add another file system, if you don't anchor at root, you can anchor it /home, and then everybody will just have their folders. That's possible. No, nothing wrong with that, except that if you ever decide that, oh, I want this data transfer node also serve slash something else. And oh, but I don't have the slash something else. Now I need to create a new collection as opposed to having this on one collection, which sometimes is good, sometimes it's not inconvenient. So general recommendation, anchor them as high as possible, and then use restrict paths directives to narrow what can be read or read write or prohibited access to the path. And it's all done through JSON documents, either inline or as a file that's fed to a command, and that's it. So here is an example of setting path restrictions. Again, if we use root slash as a base path for the collection, everything underneath is visible. But remember that it's not necessarily accessible. If the local file system permissions don't allow access to /root, a normal user will not be able to enter /root. So you create a path restriction document, update the storage gateway or creation, and you're done. And again, this is all an overlay that's stored in Globus. Nothing, you don't read you don't change the read, write, execute bits on the file system. So here is an example. Storage gateway ID, give it a file. Again, it's a transient file. It only lives just to be read. But this is a live. I think I've taken this from one of the Purdue clusters that I've configured. So we want to serve data sets read only, but /home and /scratch is globally visible. That's something like that. And you can explicitly list some things that you don't want the user to be able to enter, just as an extra layer of security. If you're a member of an institution that has a subscription, you can tag your subscription endpoint with a subscription to unlock extra premium features. You can be a member of subscription group, or a subscription manager for your organization can subscribe your resource. Again, look at the settings/subscription in the web app. Subscribed endpoint allows guest collections. So that's how sharing is done. You can enable allows HTTPS access. So people can just download and upload files directly from their browser. Less preferable than the normal Globus transfer, but an option. You can assign additional roles for endpoint management. I think this is most important. Unsubscribed endpoint has only owner and users. Subscribed endpoint has an owner, but then it can be there could be multiple administrators, multiple endpoint managers, and multiple endpoint monitors. So for different tasks. Okay, high assurance storage gateways. It's a subscription feature, and there is a Globus console that kind of that gives a nice visual view of what's happening in your endpoint. And with that, I think I'm out of time, so I'll skip to subscribe your endpoint. That really, either if you only have a member of one subscription group, you can just use a shortcut default, or you can give a subscription ID, and that's it. And then you can confirm it with just run endpoint show, and there will be a subscription ID show. Again, I already mentioned identity roles and permissions. Best practice, delegate. You definitely want multiple admins on the subscribed endpoint. Best practice is just create a Globus group and then add people, your fellow sysadmins, to that Globus group, and then and delegate the permission to the group. If you ever need to look at the, by default, all the show commands on storage gateways, collections, and endpoint show general information. You can include private policies option to see much more, but more protected view of full config. All right, guest collections. They can be created. You can limit who who can create them, where they can create them, and with whom they can measure, they can share. So because with guest collections, the access is done by with credentials of the sharer. The access logs only show the access, the identity of the collection creator. If you configure your endpoint as high assurance, the audit logs will not the endpoint, sorry, your collection, the storage gateway and collection is high assurance. The audit logs will show, will log both the sharer and the sharee, the guest user as well. Sharing restriction, again, user allow by group, by user, by paths. So you can limit the shareable paths within the universe of accessible paths for the mapped users. And you can fine tune policies. And a very neat new feature is you can configure your guest collection to be auto deleted on inactivity, and you can also configure permissions on guest collections to expire after a certain amount of time. So I create a guest collection, I grant my permission to my collaborator in a, and you can say in a month those that carriage will become pumpkin. So uploads, downloads, management console. It's a nice GUI overview. I would have shown it to you, but I don't have any resources that I own right now and that have active transfers. But if you go to the console link in the web app, you may be able to see it. And okay, I'm done. Resources, link. We have a couple of YouTube videos, obviously DocSite and Globus support, and myself. Oof.
Well, thank you so much, Lev, for sharing your expertise today.